Hey, what's up, Can't Believers? Welcome to another episode of the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. Today is one of our Rituals for Resilience episodes on our Friday. I'm getting better at saying that, by the way. I've been practicing. I hope you can tell. I've been doing something a little bit different inside of some of my socials, and I've been doing these like random AMAs. There's an app out there that allows a lot of people who follow the message and who engage with the message to submit anonymous questions and anonymous comments. And while a lot of it has been really, really funny, there have been some questions on like, okay, Des, you're not talking a great deal about your coaching programs and what you're doing with some of these high level athlete entrepreneurs. Like, what does a program entail? And to be honest, friends, what I've been trying to do is throwing myself much more into this podcast. Obviously, one way that I love to show up is in our coaching programs, because I can't not coach athletes. Like, it's just kind of my way of pouring into something that I deeply believe in through allowing others to tell their story. And that's one thing that I love. And so in today's episode, we're actually going to have one of my amazing clients who have just graduated from some of our high performance programs. And what I really think sets Larissa apart is not only her ability to be coachable, but also going into it, understanding that sometimes rest and recovery is okay. And I can imagine that as I'm speaking to a lot of you who have either been athletes or are currently trying to regain your athleticism, or are currently athletes stepping into that next phase in your life, we're oftentimes taught this toxic message, this hustle culture of keep going, keep working. And while I want to say, yes, there is extreme value in that, having that Kobe Bryant Mamba mentality of continuing to go, but at the same time, the rest and recovery piece I think is so important because it allows us to go back into our humanity. And what I love about today's conversation is not only just getting to talk to Larissa once again, but also thinking about all the things and all the value that she was able to drop just in telling her story that I think is going to be incredibly influential for you. So if you get nothing from today, I want you to be okay with the idea that it is okay to rest and recover so that you can come back stronger. Welcome to another episode of the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. Inside of our Rituals for Resilience Friday episodes, I have someone on that I am so excited for you all to meet. And selfishly, I just really love talking to her because having been a client of mine and graduated one of our programs, it's been really cool to see her transformation. So Larissa Runyan, welcome to the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. I am so excited to be chatting with you. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Is this your first time on a pod?
Yep.
This is great. You're also highly educated and do presentations all the time. So I'm pretty sure this isn't like brand new, but obviously a new experience. All that being said, I'm really excited to have you on for a lot of reasons, but kind of we were discussing off air of like some of the things that we might discuss, Larissa. And I felt like you are a prime example of what it means to really develop yourself in a way where you fall in love with the process and be open to the guidance that happens, not only just from a nutrition or exercise perspective, but really tapping into the mindset of what it means to just be aware of some of your limiting beliefs and what to do from there. So, as I was looking at this opportunity and kind of thinking about questions that I want to ask you, I guess the first question, Larissa, when you first reached out that you needed some guidance, what was going on in your life where you're like, damn, I need some help?
Yeah. So I was actually looking back at text messages
I know,
to
right?
like see like what spurred this. And I remember pretty clearly now, just from looking back at photos, there was this one where I had gotten to a point where like I was very tired physically because of the amount of physical activity that I was doing.
Hmm.
But then like the most visible kind of like signpost for me as far as like I'm done. Like I can't keep trying to do this on my own was this picture that I had taken, and it was my legs, and I'd
That's
gotten
so
iron
crazy. I know
deficient
exactly what you're
in a
talking about right now.
practice, or yeah, in some of my practices. And I took the picture the day before a tournament that I ended up winning gold in. It was my
Yeah.
first tournament, but like my legs, I have never seen them that bruised before. Like they
Yeah.
just looked like trash, just, black everywhere. Like somebody had just abused me. And it was that moment where I was like, look at what I'm doing to my body just by not taking good care of myself.
Yeah.
Right? That was a wake up call where you kind of get this mindset, because I was a college athlete before this, of like, you just got to train harder, you just need to
Just keep
like
going.
keep going. And I
Yeah.
looked at that and I was like, okay, this is where the line is, where like clearly I'm not doing the things to care for my body so that I'm recovering well, and that's going to keep affecting me moving forward unless I do something about it.
We should probably give our listeners a little bit of insight of some of the things that you excel at. So obviously you were a college athlete. The reason why you came to me was actually because you stepped into something a bit different, which has now become your passion project, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, can you let our listeners know how big of a badass you are?
So I do jujitsu now. Jujitsu is so much fun because I always enjoyed like physical contact sports growing up.
Yeah.
I ended up like my college sport was volleyball, so I missed out on it for that period. But right, like had three brothers, just loved anything where you're getting to be rough with people. But
Hmm.
but yeah, like starting back into this, I just kind of like had this mindset of more is better. I just need
Hmm.
to keep putting in the hours, keep pushing, because that was sort of also my mindset about school too, right? Like I'm in a
Yeah.
PhD program, and a lot of trying to finish out a PhD is just you got to clock the hours, you got to like
Yeah.
read so many books, you got to try to like type up so many notes so that you have enough material to just keep going. But mentally and physically, I was just running so dry all the time, like didn't have
Yeah.
hardly anything to keep pushing. um, and whenever I reached out to you, like I was very much like, I want to work with you and I want to learn nutrition, but I also like want to keep excelling because
Yeah.
that's what I've gotten used to. And I was very hesitant about working with you
Yeah. I
initially
remember.
because I was like, I'm very afraid to like let myself relax and like give
Yeah.
over some sort of control because I just wanted to keep performing at this level.
And it's really jogging my memory now because I think our first conversation, because I used to, so when we first had our conversation, I think it was at the very tail end of 2022, and we didn't actually get started until January 2023,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, because I was
Yeah.
coming off of some injury to my back, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I think I remember, and it's really fruitful to this day because I feel like you've actually given in to the idea of what it means to rest and recover. But I remember our first conversation, I was like, okay, thank you so much for all the information that you gave me. Yes, the way that your legs look right now is heavily concerning. All that being said, Larissa, I'm going to give you my first pointer, and that is like, you have to rest. And I
Hmm.
remember just, I couldn't see you, but I could sense not only just in your tonality or your pace of what you were talking about, but it was really uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, I was
Can you
like,
talk about that a
oh.
little bit?
I just, I don't. I guess I just had it in my mind of like rest is bad because I
Rest is
felt
bad.
like like, well, because I guess I got in this mindset of, if I whenever I slow down, then I end up like having to deal with like my own thoughts. And
Yeah.
like my identity is so based in all of these things that I do like at that moment, right? And like if I'm not performing well in all these different areas of my life, then who am I? um, and I like would have such
Existential
a
question.
Oh yeah, I would have such a hard time like pushing against the voice in my head that was saying like, you resting right now is like you being lazy, or
Yeah.
shows that you've got like a lack of initiative, or
Yeah.
some
How are
crap
we
like
going to get
that.
better if we're not just working the whole time?
Right, which it's just completely against like what you actually need to do to be successful, right? Because
Yeah.
as we've talked about throughout the program, like how do you expect to perform at a high capacity if you're not also like ingesting the right kinds of foods, giving yourself the
Hmm.
right kind of fuel as far as like rest, recuperation. But that was the expectation that I had for myself.
Yeah.
Like, some of it was like just having a scarcity mindset, thinking like I need to try to make it on at like as little as possible, like
Yeah.
from being a grad student. But other things, it was just like, yeah, I've just got like this bad mentality of like hard work is the thing that'll get me through.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like working smarter rather than harder.
Yeah. Which is like way easier said than done, because I think when you truly give yourself into the process, it truly means that you have to be okay with all of the parts of you. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
Larissa, what was really cool, kind of comparing day one to day 90, if you will, is that there was a level of comfort and, okay, I feel like, Des, for the most part, you're not crazy. Like, you seem pretty cool. Like, you seem like you kind of know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Um, so there was a nice balance between that, but also a massive amount of discomfort with, I can no longer do the things that I'm doing, and I have to be okay with that. So, kind of looking back, Larissa, if you can kind of 30,000 foot view into your process, um, what sort of messages would you tell yourself at day one to help you sort of overcome some of the barriers and things that we encountered in the 90 days?
Mm. Well, I do remember there was one message you told me on day one that ended up getting repeated like towards the very end, which was you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Yes.
right? And that was a theme that came up later whenever you and I just had like a sit down session after I had
Hmm.
gotten re injured and I had like
Yeah.
all these negative thought patterns that were starting to come back, where you were like, these are opportunities, you
Hmm.
know, for you to start combating all of these narratives, because these are things that are going to keep recurring if you're not careful, right? And
Yeah.
so that's one of the things that like I did actually hear it at the start, but I didn't like internalize it.
Yeah.
And that's starting to make much more sense now. um, so I think that that's one thing, like if I could go back, I would just
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
like
That
not
makes
shake
sense.
myself because that's too mean, but like try to find ways of getting myself to be okay with trying new things.
Hmm.
Um, I think that I would also like try to find ways of convincing former Larissa, like, hey, it's okay to invest in yourself in ways that you would normally just be investing in other people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like I like part of the work of the program was, I remember there was a question on one of the questionnaires early on asking, are you ready to like financially invest in yourself in ways that you haven't done previously? And I had this moment of, I don't know if I am ready to do that. Like I live
Yeah.
on a grad student budget, but then realizing you have enough money to be buying good food. Like
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
really don't need to be chalking so much of it away. And there are other things that you can sort of decide, like me eating well is more important than like this
Mm.
other thing, right? If it
Yeah.
really comes down to it. But it wasn't that. It was like this, I'm trying to, I was thinking so much about like the distant future and like
Yeah.
that the job market is terrible, that I was
Yeah.
like, let me just stow all this money away in my savings account
Yeah.
and not really like invest in myself now.
Hmm.
So those were a couple of the things, and then the third one, I guess, was uh, like I wish I could go back and tell myself like, hey, more weightlifting is not always like the best thing in terms of like this physical contact sport. Like
Yeah.
you do want to be weightlifting, but part of the issue was I was having a lot of muscle cramps because lack of recovery, and then also just like expecting too much of my body.
Yeah. I love those things because as I'm looking back at just the trajectory, we had some really massive wins in the first like 45 days.
Yeah.
Like we went to like you went to tournaments. You took the gold, I think, three
Three
times or two,
tournaments. Yeah.
3 tournaments, right? And like we saw massive immediate success and results, which is great because as I'm looking at it, it's like I know this process is going to take some time and we're probably going to go through some woes, but like the first 45 days was like, wow, we are off to the races.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing great. You got promoted to blue belt, which was really cool to kind of be a part of that process because I know
Yeah.
how much you love the sport and how much you give of yourself to it.
Mm-hmm.
So like we had some massive wins, and then for one reason or another, your number got picked
Yep.
and you got injured.
Well, if we're being real about it, like the reason I got injured is sort of like a return to an old mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite in the same way. Like my problem in sports usually whenever I get injured is I'm trying to do that thing of like pushing so hard
Yeah.
rather than playing smart. And so
Mm-hmm.
like, the reason I got injured was I should have like abandoned a certain move in jujitsu and just like gave up the position and tried to do something from like, okay, well, she took my back. How do I try to
Mm-hmm.
get out of this, right? But instead, I tried to force something that wasn't going to work, and it made my knee go the wrong way, and it was very painful.
Yeah.
And I've been paying the consequences of this for the last 3 months, because of like pre-existing injuries.
Yeah.
That's just then the recovery time. But yeah, but it's really making me think again about like whenever I return to this sport, I want to be much more intentional about the way that I perform as a player. Like a lot of jujitsu is very technique based, and it's not so much always just like try harder. Sometimes it really is just, okay, I'm going to give up this, but then I'm going to immediately know what I'm doing afterwards and catch my opponent off guard.
Yeah.
Um, you know, like, and that's that all of these things in like nutrition and jiu-jitsu seem to transition into life lessons so
Yeah.
well.
That was kind of my next question, Larissa, because as you're talking about it, I oftentimes find a lot of the different athlete and athlete entrepreneurs that we have in our programs and that we have as guests on this podcast, there's some synchronicity in their passion project, which is oftentimes their sport, their athleticism, their performance. But there's some real synchronicity into life lessons. And I felt like what was really great is when you got injured, we were already able to build on some of the foundations and the synchronicity of your life and also your sport. So to get you back into the mind frame of, hey, this is an opportunity. Like, yes, this sucks. Oh my God. Like, you've worked so hard. Every reason to be disappointed. For no reason or another, your number just got picked. That's how this works. Yes, there might be some things beforehand that you could have learned and we can take into the next. But
Right.
all in all, this is an opportunity. I'm kind of wondering now as you're looking back, like, what have been some real life lessons that you've been able to sort of collect with the guidance and the coaching of a program like this, your jujitsu training, and maybe just your life right now?
Hmm. Yeah. So that's a really good question. So as far as the program specifically, I think one of the main lessons that I've come away from it with is sometimes change really can just be incremental over time, right?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
like a lot of the program was, okay, like, you're not eating well right now, but what are the small steps that we can take to where you're developing better habits? And I think you and I first started out with like looking at plates, right? And
Yeah.
ratios for
Mm-hmm.
plates. But then also, okay, start counting up how much protein you're eating per meal.
Yeah.
And then, right, like start looking at the amount of fats that you're eating per meal. And then, like, towards the very end of the program, we started looking more specifically at, okay, you're doing really good on fats and proteins and carbs. Now let's start thinking a little bit more about the amount of fiber that you're
Yeah.
ingesting with like the vegetables that you're eating and things like that. Or, hey, you might want to start like drinking tart cherry juice before you go to
Yeah.
bed, because
All
like
the
that's going to
things.
be a really good recovery drink.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really helpful for like thinking about the program. A second thing was just like setting up some sort of system of like checking in with myself.
Yeah.
Because right in the program, I was doing it with you, but even like now being finished with the program, I find like either logging food on like a fairly regular basis is pretty helpful, or sometimes even just like taking pictures and then looking back at the end of a day and seeing like what
Yeah.
is it that I actually ate, because otherwise my life is so go 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 that I'll kind of just be like, like it's not that important what I eat,
Yeah.
and get to the end of the day and find like I haven't really put in the kind of fuel that I would need for like an evening intensive practice.
Mm-hmm.
And then a third one, which isn't like necessarily specific to your program, but like was just a really useful lesson during the season is jujitsu. You learn a lot that it's okay to fail, that like failure is part of the
It's
process.
okay to suck.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're gonna get defeated. You
Yeah.
walk onto the mats, and you, especially as a person starting out, you know that pretty much everybody out there is better than you. And even as you're improving, even the black belts who are there, they can still get submitted, and they do regularly get submitted by other people while they're
Hmm.
trying new techniques, you know,
Yeah.
or giving someone else a shot to try something from a position, right? Um, and so that was something that I did like start to see in the program too, because I was thinking about it a lot with jujitsu. Is like there would be times where I remember I would be typing up like the Friday check-ins,
Yeah.
and I would just be frustrated by like I felt like I hadn't performed, at the level
Yeah.
that I wanted to during
Yeah.
a
Why am
given
I
week.
checking in if I didn't feel like I did okay?
Yeah, but it's like, but that's part of the process too, right?
Yeah.
Is taking stock and then being able to identify, here's the victories from this week. Here are the ways in which I need a little bit more accountability, or,
Yeah.
like maybe I just didn't buy the right groceries before the week started. And then the week just didn't go well because of that,
Yeah.
It's some of the
Learning.
things are really simple.
Yeah. No, Larissa, I think, again, kind of looking back at our time together, I really enjoyed your fortitude during some really intense moments. I think when we look at hardship, it's so hard to just go inward and to be okay with all parts of you. And I think what I really enjoyed about working with you, Larissa, was your acceptance of all parts of you. And
Mm.
that's what made like our conversations and our guidance really easy on my end. I think I said this to you, like, this is easy. Like, you're just making me look good, and thank you. Like,
You're welcome.
you know what I mean? So, like, for all those reasons, it's been fantastic to share this space with you, and it's been so cool to see your maturation and your evolution, first as a human being, and then obviously as an athlete. Some of the tremendous things you're going to be doing in the world once you're done with grad school, like all of those things. So, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time. I like to, anytime a guest comes on, I like to ask them this same question. So we'll end it on this. So obviously, this is the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. So in your current season, have you made it? And if not, what does making it look like for you?
Hmm. Ooh, that's a tough question.
Yeah. I only asked the tough ones.
So I think I can say that I made it, but not in the way that I anticipated that I would whenever I started this program. I
Hmm.
think whenever I started this program, it was all about like, I want to eat well, so that I can continue to perform as like top level athlete. Well, top level for me, right? Like doing
Yeah.
well at jujitsu, and then doing well in my PhD. And like at the end of the day, for me, this program was much more about, I don't really want my identity to be based so much in the things that I'm doing.
Hmm.
I want to like learn what it looks like to take care of myself in the way that I want to take care of my students as an instructor, and the way in which like I want to exude care towards my teammates, even as I'm trying to like choke them, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, like, yeah, I think I can say that I made it, but it's more in this way of, I feel like I know much more who Larissa is by the
Hmm.
end of this program. And I learned along the way, like, oh, and this is what it looks like to take better care of myself,
Yeah.
right? Those two things were very intrinsically tied together. Um, and I feel like I should have known that before the program started, because I'm a very religious and spiritual person, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, you know, but like I guess I just kept thinking to myself like it's all a mental thing, and a lot of how you feel on a day-to-day basis is very tied in with your physical state of being too.
Yeah.
So just wanted to say thank you for all of that. Thank you for continuing to work with me whenever I was very like resistant and wanted to make things harder than
Yeah.
they needed to be.
It's okay. Well, Larissa, it's been an absolute pleasure. For our listeners out there, I want you to remember the name Larissa Runyan, because Her progression inside of the sport has been really cool to see. And selfishly, as a local to Tucson, Arizona, I love to see Tucson people thrive. So, Larissa, I'm excited to continue to have front row seats to your progression as you return back to sport. But for all the reasons, dude, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for the trust. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your story here. And I'm sure we'll have you back on when we continue to progress into the purples, the browns, and then the blacks at some point. So,
Yeah, me
congratulations
too.
on your success so far, my friend.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So, like I said, remember that name for our listeners out there in our Rituals for Resilience Friday episodes. I think one of the biggest message here that Larissa just shared is what it means to truly be okay with the idea, not only of just resting and allowing yourself to recover, because we put a lot of expectations on ourselves as high level individuals. But also, Larissa, what you had just shared there, that sometimes your performance is not just really based on some of the things that you're doing, but also your physical state and how you're feeling about yourself. So
Right.
I appreciate you sharing that insight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, y'all. Catch you on the next one. Later.